West. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has been invited to the Arab League summit set to take place next week in Jeddah. It's the first invitation he's gotten since the civil war broke out. The invitation comes days after Damascus was reinstated to the group, the thaw in relations coming despite no political solution to the civil war itself. Now, one of the regions still out of Assad's control is the northwestern Syrian province of Idlib. France 24's Wassim Nasr recently traveled to the area and he joins us now. Wassim, great to see you as always. Firstly, how did you get to Idlib? Who invited you?
Well, I got invited. It was a long process, more than a year of talks with HTS, Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, the dominant group in Idlib. We should remember Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham is headed by Mohammed al-Julani, which is the former head of al-Qaeda in Syria. Knowing that Julani was missioned by Baghdadi, the Islamic State, to go to Syria in 2011, 2012. Then he joined al-Qaeda, left the Islamic State, and then today he is fighting both the Islamic State and al-Qaeda. So the process was done with them in order to get into Idlib, which is very normal, and also with the Turkish authorities. Without the approval, nobody can go into Idlib because anyone who goes into Idlib has to go through Turkey.
And what did you see when you were in Idlib? Firstly, is the state functioning, or is there a lot of fighting? What's going on?
I didn't see any fighting because we have to know that it's almost like 3 years. There's almost a ceasefire between HTS and the Syrian army. They still have small fights on the front lines, which I didn't visit. And also sometimes the Russians and the Syrian army strike in villages on those front lines. But as we see here in the pictures, the most notable thing is the absence of armed presence in Idlib.
That's what I was going to ask. Are there a lot of checkpoints?
Two checkpoints to get into Idlib.
Once you're inside, are there a lot of...
No armed presence. I didn't see any people with jihadi outfits, with Afghani outfits. I didn't see people hanging around with guns. And I was told by the people who are accompanying me that they convinced the people there that fighters should be on front lines and not among civilians. And another notable thing is that we see the flags of the revolution all over the place. So when you enter the area, you have a huge flag of the revolution, then the flag with the Shahada, with the Islamic Shahada, which we see here, but also a lot of flags of the revolution, which would have been unacceptable by a real jihadi group. And this is what's interesting about the visit, that we are seeing a real jihadi group or real jihadi personalities like Julani, Abu Maria al-Qahtani, and others who are in the ranks of the Islamic State and al-Qaeda shifting and going out of global jihad. Even though when I was negotiating with them, I was presenting myself as an expert on jihadi groups. And they were like, we don't want to talk to you. We are not jihadis anymore. We are fighting al-Qaeda. We are fighting the Islamic State. We called even on the dissolution of al-Qaeda. We are preventing the youth in Idlib from joining those two groups. We don't want to talk to you. We don't want to be labeled anymore as jihadis.
So essentially what you're saying is now they're fighting extremist groups, terrorists essentially, and now they're focused on running a state. Is that right?
They are still labeled as terrorists. They are still labeled as terrorists. And I got to meet with Julani for more than an hour and a half. And we can see maybe who he is. And I met also Abu Maria al-Qahtani, which is one of his companions since the era of Iraq. And we have his picture. And on the picture we're going to see, we have 3 persons. Julani in the middle, Qahtani on his right, and another person on his left. The 2 persons are the people who have in charge the fight against the Islamic State. Here we see them. And Abu Ahmad Zakur, which is on the left of Julani, was sanctioned by the US administration while I was in Idlib as providing funds for a terrorist group. But they think that they are not terrorists anymore. They even said to me, Maria Qahtani said, it's the first time that he speaks to a journalist, actually, either local or foreign. And he told me, you don't have anything against the West. We are preventing the youth from joining al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. I called for the dissolution of al-Qaeda, and we are fighting the same fight as Ukraine for their soil. So why are people labeling us terrorists and not backing us up against the Syrian regime? So they are in a new dynamic. And one more time, which is very interesting, is that they shifted from a real jihadi group to something else, which is a first in the history of jihadi groups today.
Okay, so they're acknowledging that they've made this shift. I'm going to talk about the relations with Damascus in a moment, but let's talk about the area itself. Idlib was one of the regions in Syria that was hit by that recent earthquake, those twin earthquakes in February. What did you see in terms of the devastation that was caused? And also because one of the problems that the region faced was a lack of aid coming in.
Exactly. What I have to say also is that I saw United Nations crews entering Idlib and around the Idlib, which is not very common. Like the area is still opening because of the earthquake. And I got to see their minister of development and human aid or international aid, which has in charge the camps. And we have we have footage of those camps. They are huge, many orphans, many widows, and zero means. And he told me, their minister, that one of their aims was to empty the camps, at least the illegal camps, because you have legal camps and illegal camps, and we are talking about more than 1.5 million person in those camps, displaced, forced to be displaced, or running from fightings, forced by Damascus. And he told me we were trying to empty those camps by building besides them something with walls but without a roof, because they don't have the right to build a roof with UN funding. It will mean building new villages, you see. And he said we tried to do this in order to at least monitor the camps and make it more sane for the population. But the earthquake made us put the people who are damaged by the earthquake instead of putting those people who are in the camps in the new camps. So the problem is huge. And he says we don't ask him for money. We're not asking for money. We're asking for expertise. We don't have the expertise. We're asking for expertise to help those people, because it is clear for him, who he has this in charge, that if those camps aren't tackled properly, the youth in those camps will end up in the ranks of the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, or in criminal organizations.
And the youth in these camps are coming from where?
Syrians mostly, displaced, forced by Damascus when they made peace deals with areas like Damascus, Ghouta, etc., or people fleeing the front lines, you see.
And Wassim, you said the people now in control of Idlib say that they are no longer extremists or whatever. So what about the population itself? Do they have the freedom to practice whatever religion they wanted, etc.?
Well, it's a very good question, because for the first time since maybe 12 years, a foreign journalist got to visit Christian villages in Idlib. We have to know that those villages were hardly hit by jihadi groups in 2013, 2015. People were killed. Women were raped, churches were burned, and we have pictures to see those churches that got burned. And I took those pictures, and the persons who were responsible of those human rights abuses were in the ranks of the Nusra Front, meaning headed by Julani himself. You see, but today they say that they made their self-critique, and today they are allowing, maybe we should see the pictures, those Christians to repair their churches and to conduct their religion in the churches, you see, but not to show signs of their Christianity. Maybe we can see it, so we can see that they don't have to, they cannot put crosses on the churches.
But they can put crosses inside the church.
Inside the church they can. Here's one of the churches at the St. Joseph Monastery that was repaired, and people there from the village told me that Mass was said every day, and you see here the cross is painted in black on the sides, so it cannot be seen from the outside, just from the inside. And here is the cross of another of the same church, which is hidden. Here is the monastery of Saint Joseph, where they received people that were hit by the earthquake, still in this monastery, which is being repaired by the Christians community there, meaning that this is a real shift, because under jihadi groups, Christians do not have the right to repair damaged churches. The problem. Like, I witnessed a real meeting where HTS was trying to give back houses and property to the Christians. Problems are still very real. A few houses were given back, meaning foreign fighters were kicked out of those houses and given back to the Christians. The question now is about the land that allow those Christians to live properly, because they are all agriculture.
I'm curious, how much access did you have? How much freedom did you have? Could you walk by yourself in the province of Idlib and speak to whoever you wanted?
I got to speak to whoever I wanted. I got to take the pictures that I wanted, because basically I wasn't supposed to take pictures or to film. So this came along. I mean, the village. I wasn't supposed to meet Julani. It was arranged along the visit. But of course, I had someone with me driving me.
I'm curious, what do residents that you spoke to say of the state right now? Is the state functioning? Are there schools? Are children attending schools? Are they being educated?
Yes. Listen, they are trying to make things function. They assume that this is the less difficult solution that they can have. We are not saying that HTS is becoming a democratic group. They are still Islamists. They are still rigorous. For example, in a cafe, a cafe that I got to visit, women and men are separated. In restaurants, they are, but in malls, they are not. In gardens, they are not. I saw people smoking. I heard revolutionary music in the shops, in the streets. Meaning, there is a difference between a jihadi group governing and how HTS is governing today, with its salvation government formed only by civilians. And I was told by people who work in this salvation government that even if Julani and HTS are labeled as terrorists, are the people in Idlib or the children in those camps terrorists too? So it's a real question, because we saw it after the earthquake. Idlib got very little aid while it was hit as hard as Turkey.
But because aid was being controlled by Damascus, that goes to my next question. Are there any ties between who's running Idlib and Bashar al-Assad?
It's war between them. But when I talked to the Christians there, they told me, we hope that some passages will be open between the areas controlled by Damascus and HTS, which HTS doesn't oppose, just for those Christians and the populations living in Idlib to be able to commerce with other areas and not to go all through other areas controlled by other parties and the YPG, etc., to get to Damascus.
And what do they say about this recent rapprochement which we're seeing between Bashar al-Assad and all these Arab states?
Well, of course, they oppose it. Of course, they say that they're going to stand firm against it, and they say that they still have the force and the will to fight, because they consider that they are the last hope of the 4.5 million people living there, without forgetting that among the power cards that they have is the amount of refugees there, that if war breaks out will go to Turkey and maybe to Europe, and also the high numbers of foreign fighters and their families still living in Idlib. If we talk about the French, we are talking about 200 persons still living in Idlib. And those are being kept under control today by HTS.
In limbo. Thank you very much for that, Wassim Nasr there.